In a world shrouded in light and darkness, a man dubbed humanity's last hope was suddenly betrayed. A companion who once stood by his side had cast him into the abyss of the demon realm. Amidst the dim flicker of hope, he recognized the treachery from those he had sworn to protect with all his heart. Just as everything seemed to crumble around him, he was unexpectedly presented with a chance by the demon lord. From that moment on, he joined the demon ranks and, thanks to his extraordinary abilities, swiftly became the most trusted genius of the demon lord. To avenge those who had betrayed him, he formed an army of 12 demons. With overwhelming power, they launched their assault on the human world. However, during a fierce battle against the warriors, Devon sustained severe injuries that left lasting scars. Now, even the slightest pressure could send him spiraling into madness. On a day like any other, he resolved to submit his resignation to the demon lord. The reaction was immediate. The demon lord slammed his hand on the table, his expression dark, demanding to know if Devon truly wished to leave. The weight of this pressure made Devon feel as though all hope had slipped away. Unexpectedly, the demon lord clutched Devon's leg tightly, feigning innocence as he claimed it was all just a joke. Devon, still in disbelief, raised an eyebrow and asked, "Do you truly wish to eliminate me?" To his surprise, the demon lord looked utterly taken aback. In an instant, the demon lord seized Devon, who was still bewildered, and inquired if his recent absence from the front lines had left him feeling restless. The result, the demon lord had used too much force, causing blood to trickle from Devon's nose. As the doctor examined him, the demon lord watched on. Worrying, the demon lord paced back and forth. But in reality, Devon was not gravely injured, he merely bore the after-effects of battle. Upon hearing this, the demon lord immediately grew displeased, warning the doctor to find a remedy for Devon without delay. "If you fail, I'll send you to the human realm as dog food." With a dismissive wave, the demon lord left Devon bewildered as the doctor clumsily placed him on a stretcher. A few attendants hurriedly carried him away until the doctor finally departed. Slowly, Devon propped himself up. In truth, these were not battle scars. Since birth, his body had been exceptionally frail, even the slightest stress could make him faint. If anyone discovered that he was inherently weak, he wouldn't just face ridicule from these lunatics, but could also become their new toy. Thus, Devon could only think that the demon lord should hurry up and approve his resignation, allowing him to escape the demon realm and find a quiet place to hide. Little did he know, the demon lord, after reviewing his resignation letter, called for a meeting of all the advisors to discuss Devon. This was also the first time Devon encountered the other commanding officers. However, as soon as he sat down, he realized things were far from simple. While the other commanders savored their fine wine, his cup was filled only with grape juice. This stark contrast left him feeling a twinge of dissatisfaction, but the Demon King urged him not to be upset, explaining that this meeting was organized for his sake, and there were valid reasons for his non-alcoholic drink. With that, the Demon King commanded his subordinates to report the situation. It turned out that a catastrophe had struck the village, protected by the 12th Legion. Not only had half of the structures been ravaged by monsters, but the commander of the 12th Legion had also perished in the incident. The surge in monstrous activity was attributed to the corpse of a fallen warrior lying on the ground, drawing the creatures like moths to a flame. Upon hearing this, the entire hall fell silent. Devon felt a headache creeping in, as it was clear the blame was being placed squarely on him. In a panic, he gestured to the Demon King beside him, but the Demon King, oblivious to his distress, simply smiled and reassured everyone not to worry. "Spirit Legion will go to provide assistance," the Demon King declared, casting an expectant glance at Devon. At that moment, Devon was seething with rage, quickly claiming that his body had yet to fully recover. Almost immediately, another commander stood up. He remarked that while others might find excuses to decline, the Spirit Commander was undoubtedly suppressing an intense desire to join the fray, having assessed his own physical condition with calm determination. Hearing this, the Demon King also sprang to his feet. He stood up alongside the other commanders, and seeing the atmosphere shift, Devon realized he had no choice but to grit his teeth and shoulder this burden. In truth, he was just looking for an opportunity to escape. But just as he was finishing packing, the Demon King caught wind of his intentions, mistakenly believing him to be overly anxious. The Demon King immediately insisted that Devon must set off right away. However, just as their carriage had traveled halfway, a horde of monsters appeared before them. A man, wild like a drunken lunatic, suddenly drew a knife and pointed it at himself, while not far off, a creature charged toward him. With a swift kick, it sent him crashing against the wall. Yet this shocking turn of events jolted Devon back to reality, making him realize that the true enemy was the monster before him. With no other option, he embraced his inner fury. Suddenly, Devon transformed into a relentless killing machine. A single stroke split the monster in two, and his subsequent actions grew increasingly frenzied. Soldiers nearby were filled with terror, as each of his strikes left no remnants of their foes. Even when he knew the adversaries were defeated, he did not relent. His weapon remained unsheathed, as the monsters around him quaked in fear. Ultimately, they all fell beneath Devon's blade. But when he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying in bed, with a doctor and a stranger by his side. The doctor immediately gazed at him with admiration. It turned out he had heard that Devon single-handedly annihilated a large number of monsters, leading the entire legion to complete their mission without a single casualty. However, Devon had no recollection of this, only recalling that he had downed a bottle of wine from 82. At that moment, 3 figures entered the room. They were the commanders of the 12th Legion, all having come to inquire about Devon's recent exploits. However, Devon lowered his head and loudly demanded they leave. As a result, the 3 stood there, frozen in place. Devon wasn't sure what these individuals intended, but noticing the fear etched on 2 of the commanders' faces, he furrowed his brow and remarked that he was quite displeased. He warned them that continuing to act with reckless violence would be detrimental to everyone present. His words immediately carried a sense of intimidation. Yet, moments later, Laya transformed into an admiring girl, captivated by Devon's legendary feats which had echoed throughout the Demon King's city. Almost everyone knew he had vanquished over half of the monsters. This left Devon feeling somewhat bewildered. Just then, the commander of the 3rd Legion approached, hoping to request that once Devon regained his strength, the 2 would face off in a duel, as they were eager to witness Devon's power firsthand. This idea made Devon's head spin, as he realized that surviving a punch from this guy would be a stroke of luck. Thus, he promptly declined. Yet, the other commanders believed he was simply afraid of his opponent's strength. Kid, upon hearing this, could only bow his head in silence. Though his pride took a hit, he asserted that he would not give up. Just wait until Devon is excited. It won't be too late for us to battle. With that, he left the room, declaring he would go train. Everyone stared at him in astonishment. Previously, he had always lacked motivation, but thanks to Devon, he had regained his fervor. However, right after this declaration, Devon suddenly broke into a high fever. He had thought this would deter the other Legion commanders, but was surprised when the first commander chuckled and said he was also looking forward to facing him. This made Devon fall back onto the bed. Later that night, when no one was around, he dared to sneak out. He couldn't comprehend how things had escalated to this point, and in frustration, he kicked a stone at his feet, which ended up hitting the heads of a few tiny creatures. However, upon seeing Devon approach, the tiny creatures immediately bowed respectfully to him. Devon didn't scold them. Instead, he asked why they were out at this hour. Before they could respond, he noticed a nightmare sitting on the ground and instantly understood that they were bullying him. The nightmare belonged to the lowest caste in the demon realm. Seeing it curled up on the ground, Devon felt a pang of sorrow and reached out to lift it up. Yet the nightmare hesitated, feeling unworthy of receiving help from anyone. Noticing this, Devon firmly pulled it to its feet. He then told it not to belittle itself. Gently, he patted its back. This was the first time the nightmare had felt such warmth. It looked at Devon with admiration and asked, "My lord, do you have a moment now? I really want to repay you." It was the most trusted servant of the Demon King. Yet, he was so weak that he couldn't even lift a low-quality wooden sword. However, the number of followers around him was countless. Some even viewed this scene as a lesson during their training. Devin, trying to maintain his facade of strength, told the students present that with perseverance and practice, they would soon become powerful like him. Amid the crowd, an assassin suddenly drew his sword and charged towards Devin, who had his back turned. In that moment, Devin barely managed to react, using the wooden sword to brace himself and dodge the attack. He immediately counterattacked with a punch. The assassin fell to the ground in pain. However, when Devin saw the true face of the man, he was astonished to realize that he was just a human. How could a human appear in the Demon King's city? Meanwhile, the assassin, realizing his failed attempt, quickly got back up, preparing to flee, but Devin raised the wooden sword in his hand and struck him down once more. He had knocked the attacker down and then feigned indifference, ordering his subordinates to bind the assassin and hand him over to the Demon King. But in reality, his wrist had begun to twist painfully. Everything that had just transpired was merely to save face. He had reluctantly wielded the wooden weapon. Moreover, that last strike had nearly drained all his strength. As a result, Devin found himself bedridden for a full day and night. Upon waking, he discovered the Demon King sitting by his bedside, his expression serious, demanding that Devin follow him. Devin then trailed behind the Demon King to the depths of the dark dungeon. An unsettling feeling surged within him. When he looked up, he saw the assassin from yesterday, tortured and battered, his eyes filled with a hatred that seemed ready to kill Devin on the spot. This left Devin feeling flustered. The Demon King, however, approached the tortured assassin with a smug grin, asking Devin if he recognized this man. He was also one of humanity's so-called heroes, but what amused the Demon King was that compared to the title of hero, he was nothing more than a fragment of a warrior. Most warriors, after failing in their battles against the Demon King, would choose to take their own lives to deliver a shocking blow to the surrounding demons. However, a few would sacrifice their lives, scattering their powers across the continent. The Empire would then gather those who possessed fragments of power together. Though they were outwardly called heroes, in truth, they were simply warriors sent to hell. These individuals, once they no longer held any value, would be discarded by the Empire without a second thought. Yet Devin's situation was eerily similar to theirs. Therefore, he requested a private conversation with the Demon King. Shortly after the Demon King left, the anger within the man could no longer be contained, and he cursed Devin as a traitor who, after becoming a hero of the Empire, chose to surrender to the enemy, the Demon King. Hearing this, Devin could only laugh mockingly at the man, calling him a fool. Yet, the man was utterly unconvinced by his words. Devin chose not to elaborate further, urging him to reflect on his own choices. The Empire clearly understood my intentions and purpose for venturing into the demon realm. But why send you to such a perilous place to eliminate me? With that said, he turned his back and departed from the dungeon. What amused Devin was the abysmally weak loyalty of this man. It was a waste of time to engage in matters unworthy of his attention. The Demon King, noticing that the man seemed to have released his burdens, chuckled and inquired how Devin intended to deal with him. Not wanting his identity to be revealed, Devin simply stated that it would be best to eliminate him. The Demon King agreed with his approach, but wanted to enlist Devin's help with one more matter. Currently, the volunteer army was stationed at the front lines. They had received an urgent request for support. This time, it wasn't just a regular band of heroes. True heroes were stepping into the fray. The Demon King's intentions were straightforward. What ordinary demon race could possibly stand against him? Meanwhile, Devin surely felt a surge of curiosity about the Emperor's true objective this time. With that, he turned to leave the dungeon, not granting Devin a chance to refuse. That very night, Devin set off on his journey. As he departed, the chief gifted him a pendant, an enchanted charm of protection that could at least withstand a fatal blow. This act instantly reminded Devin of his old comrades. Back then, he never killed the warriors, he didn't bear their burdens with his own flesh, he was simply one of their own. Now, he was about to face the most formidable Demon King in history. Thus, he couldn't guarantee that everyone would return alive. Yet he needed someone to report the outcome of this battle to the Empire. Hence, Devin took on that role. However, He waited long, and his closest friend still did not return. Anxious, he made his way to the front lines. Thinking that watching from a distance would pose no threat, he was met with an unforgettable scene. His best friend and comrades lay lifeless in a pool of blood. The warriors had chosen to take their own lives to eliminate the Demon King, only to be slain first by their own best friend. Yet, when the Demon King gazed at him with cold eyes, Devon showed no sign of retreat. Instead, he resolutely advanced toward the warriors. In that moment, the man who lay weakly on the ground questioned Devon loudly, asking why he would rush in knowing he would have to protect himself. Because at least in this moment, he hoped Devon could survive. With that, the warrior could only helplessly let go, his ability to protect himself slipping away as he clutched Devon's cloak, channeling his strength into remnants that merged with Devon's body, accompanied by a brilliant flash of light. The man finally met his end. In that moment, Devon grasped the gravity of what had transpired, cursing the man for being a fool. He gently laid him down on the ground, but strangely, the body showed no signs of change. In that state, Devon suddenly erupted into maniacal laughter, having struggled for so long to survive. Stopping here felt liberating, yet unexpectedly, the Demon King stepped forward with a smile, asking if he had any interest in joining the demon army. Devon was taken aback by the question. However, the Demon King believed Devon's hesitation stemmed from fear of disapproval from other demons, reassuring him that he needn't worry. The corpses of demons and warriors on the ground were more than enough to testify to his strength. From that day forth, everyone under the Demon King's command mistakenly believed him to be incredibly powerful. At that moment, his chariot had arrived at a crucial juncture, the border between the demon realm and the human world, a front line that had never ceased its conflict with the Empire. When the third general saw Devon arrive, he was overjoyed. Yet, from Devon's disheveled appearance, the man could tell the situation on the front line was dire. But now, there was no turning back. While the third general assumed Devon eagerly anticipated battle, he cheerfully informed him, "Tomorrow, we can take to the battlefield." Meanwhile, in the Empire's camp, a soldier reported Devon's participation in the fight. Upon hearing this, the man immediately furrowed his brow. For everyone knew, Devon was the Demon King's trump card, the strongest among the 13 generals. Faced with such a formidable opponent, the man had no choice but to arrange for an assassin to eliminate him. However, his subordinate informed him that the chances of success were nearly zero. Yet the man urged him not to rush. Although he was legendary for his strength, no one had verified the truth of those tales. Perhaps the existence of General Lin was merely an illusion crafted by the Demon King to bolster morale. Currently, the top priority was to send someone to gather intel. Meanwhile, Devon was preparing for the impending battle. The battlefield this time was the meeting place of humans and demons, where the sunlight was blindingly bright. Thus, the Demon King had prepared for him a bandage infused with magic, capable not only of blocking light, but also maintaining an optimal temperature and healing wounds on its own. Before long, Devon resembled a mummified figure. Although it looked strange, the weight of the cloak instilled in the assassins lurking to take him down, a belief that Devon was indeed as powerful as the legends suggested. The assassin hesitated not, gripping the poisoned needle and aiming it at Devon, who lay on the ground. But at that moment, the man seemed to sense something, bending low to evade this assassination attempt. The human assassin, he thought his movements had been exposed, hastily seeking refuge in another tree. Little did he know, the man only intended to stretch his body, but the human assassin misunderstood, believing he was signaling his trusted subordinates to secretly deal with him. The assassin initially planned to flee, but recalling his mission, he decided to take the risk and attempt an assassination. Just as he climbed onto the roof, he overheard Devon discussing the issues of the Kruna warriors. This realization solidified the assassin's conviction that the man before him had completely seen through their actions. He had to eliminate him at all costs. Seizing the moment while the two were conversing, he stealthily slipped poison into Devon's wine cup. Just a single sip would send his soul into the abyss. But to the assassin's shock, the man merely caught a whiff of the aroma before shattering the wine glass he held to the ground. The assassin, witnessing this scene, broke out in a cold sweat, utterly unprepared for Devon to sense the anomaly so quickly. Just a single sip and death would be instantaneous. Who would have thought the man would only need a sniff before smashing the red wine glass to pieces? The assassin, filled with dread, couldn't fathom how swiftly Devon had detected the danger. Yet, he was unaware that Devon had merely caught sight of a bug in front of him, a fear so overwhelming that it caused the wine glass in his hand to slip and fall, leading to this unexpected turn of events. At that moment, both men suddenly realized. Red wine on the ground began to emit smoke. They soon understood that the wine had been poisoned. However, by this time, the assassin had already escaped. He had to rush back to report to the Empire that Devon was indeed a very dangerous individual. This news spread rapidly within the demon tribe's camp, leaving everyone astonished. Apart from Devon, no one had detected his presence. But the one who felt the most guilty was Ed. He immediately approached Devon, apologizing and claiming it was all his foolishness. He was willing to accept any punishment. But at that moment, Devon was not in the mood to discuss this. He hadn't even had a sip of the wine yet. Meanwhile, in the Imperial camp, warrior Cluna sat there in distress. The assassin they had sent, clearly top tier in strength, had returned with a terrified expression. With the existence of Commander Lin now public, they needed support from other warriors. However, on further reflection, it seemed that all the heroes of the Empire had already been dispatched on missions, leaving no one available to assist. Thus, after lengthy discussions, Kruna concluded with the most sensible plan: we will proactively retreat. When the man decided on this strategy, he faced fierce opposition from his subordinates. In their eyes, an immediate retreat would surely be seen as a sign of fear before the demon forces. Moreover, if anyone pursued the Imperial army during the withdrawal, it would inevitably lead to significant losses. However, the man dismissed the warning. The orders he received were not to expand their territory into the demon world, but to reclaim the lands occupied by the demon tribe. With the Empire's territory now restored, there was no need for a direct confrontation. This was merely the first step in his journey to becoming a hero in his own right. He couldn't allow anyone to question his status as a hero. There was no choice left for him. Just as the two prepared to execute their retreat plan, a frantic subordinate rushed in to announce that the Demon King's army had launched an attack, led by that madman. This revelation sent shivers down both men's spines. Devon had completely lost his mind. With his right hand clenched tightly around a dagger, he swiftly severed the arm of the armored man. Without hesitation, he pivoted, heading toward the remaining man, while the Empire's soldiers trembled beneath Devon's terrifying gaze. Although the armored man instilled fear within him, survival instincts kicked in as he grasped a long sword and shouted, "Stay back!" Devon merely tightened his grip on his dagger, taunting that resistance would only lead to death. In an instant, he raised the sharp blade, ready to finish the man before him. Just then, a brilliant flash of golden light shot towards Devon. In the blink of an eye, he was sent sprawling back dozens of feet. Observing this, one of his subordinates rushed over to check on his condition. But as he turned around, he found a man clad in armor standing behind him, declaring, "I intended to end your life with a single strike, but that wouldn't grant me the satisfaction of victory." The newcomer was none other than the Empire's newly crowned hero, known as the Grim Reaper of the battlefield, Cruel. At this moment, Devon began regaining his composure, reaching into his armor to retrieve a purple amulet. This was a gift from the Demon King, capable of protecting him from fatal injuries. Without it, he might have perished right then and there. He quickly realized that the man before him was no ordinary foe. Rising to his feet, he swung down at the Imperial soldier, then advanced toward the armored man. "I've heard tales of your legend, but your voice sounds oddly familiar. Might you remove your helmet so I can see your face?" Upon hearing the man's outright refusal, Devon had no desire to linger. Gripping his dagger tightly, he charged at the armored figure, moving so swiftly that Cruel barely managed to evade Devon's strike. Instantly, he seized his weapon and retaliated, and the two were soon locked in a fierce battle. In the midst of the fierce battle, Cruel uncovered Devon's vulnerability. Despite his lightning-fast speed, the force of his attacks was disappointingly weak. If Cruel could leverage his strength and stamina, Devon would surely crumble under the onslaught of his blows. Indeed, the truth was undeniable. With a single slash, Devon was sent flying. Disarmed, he could only shield his arms to absorb Cruel's incoming blow. Immediately after, he kicked Cruel away, realizing that the tide of the battle was shifting. In reality, this man was hiding his true power. The more he concealed it, the more it worked to his advantage. Yet, Devon uttered a surprising statement that caught Cruel off guard. Let's call it a day. Meanwhile, in the Demon Lord city, Commander 11 sensed the damage to the chain. Realizing the situation was dire, he knew that Lord Aid was undoubtedly in danger. Ignoring his subordinates' protests, he swiftly raced to the front lines to assist. This was the place he longed for, where Lord Aid awaited him. Kakashi's appearance brought a flicker of hope to the remaining soldiers of the Empire. However, Lord Aid quickly extinguished that hope. As he slowly approached Kakashi, he said, "Your gaze reminds me of a dear friend of mine. He was truly foolish. For my sake, he was willing to sacrifice himself, never turning his back on the Empire." He continued, "And your armor is quite exquisite. Let me see just how much defense it offers." In an instant, Lord Aid lunged at Kakashi, who could only rely on instinct to evade the blow, unable to see Lord Aid's movements. Lord Aid's speed was so overwhelming that it surpassed Kakashi's perception. Kakashi could only use his weapon to gauge Lord Aid's actions. In the fierce clash between the two, within just 30 seconds, Kakashi realized the opponent's speed was incredible, but his strength was surprisingly weak. In short, it was quick and straightforward. With absolute power, a single blow could annihilate the commander before him. But in the next moment, Lord Aid drew a short sword and kicked Kakashi away. Creating distance with brute force, they fought evenly matched. Kakashi was astonished to discover that his opponent was indeed concealing his strength. Aware that the opponent was formidable, Lord Aid, feeling the urgency of the situation, declared, "It's late. Let's call it a night." Kakashi believed the battle was far from over. "It was you, the Demon Clan, who trespassed first." Lord Aid replied, "The moment the 7th Commander fell at your hands, the battle was concluded. You only need to retreat to the borders of humanity." Hearing Lord Aid's claim of having killed the 7th Commander, Kakashi recalled that the 11th Commander had been slain. Could it be that the spy's information was flawed? Kakashi, who was plagued by obsessive thoughts, agreed to withdraw to the Empire's borders, but insisted on verifying the accuracy of the information. Commander Y lamented that such a withdrawal was truly regrettable. The army's morale was high at the moment. Lord Aid surely hadn't finished playing yet, causing the enemy to retreat to regain their strength. However, visibly exhausted, Lord Aid staggered in front of Commander Y and collapsed. Deciding whether to attack or defend, the general felt a deep regret about having to retreat. Now, with the army's spirits soaring, it was clear that Lord Lloyd hadn't played enough yet, allowing the enemy to retreat and recuperate. Yet, Lloyd, in his frail state, collapsed before the general. At that moment, the new general understood that in the battle against the brave, Lloyd had not fully recovered. Carrying heavy wounds, he still managed to defeat the enemy's hero, bringing immeasurable morale to the demon soldiers. Everyone thought Lloyd was merely the pet of the Demon Lord. Little did they know how much he had contributed to the demon race. When the Demon Lord learned of Lloyd's condition worsening, he immediately brought him back to the demon fortress. Seeing Lloyd in such a weakened state, the Demon Lord felt a pang of sorrow. Lloyd expressed his desire to gather new information about the heroes. The Demon Lord teased, mentioning that just then, his lieutenant had brought back fresh data on the heroes. The image of this lieutenant flashed through Lloyd's mind, making him shudder. This lieutenant always returned with a pile of women's clothing for him to try on. He even joked that the Demon Lord found it amusing. The Demon Lord patted Lloyd on the shoulder, reassuring him, "Don't worry, Ed. I've entrusted the lieutenant with a mountain of information to sort through. It'll take him years to emerge from his quarters. For now, you should take some time to rest." Not long after, the Demon Lord brought a platter of new hero information for Lloyd to peruse. As he read intently, a sweet voice broke the silence. Lord Lloyd. He was taken aback, confused about how she had returned to the demon fortress. Lily was relieved to see Lloyd safe and sound. Tears streamed down her face as she embraced him, exclaiming that he was unharmed. He clearly remembered downing a bottle of wine at the barracks and wondered why he was so intoxicated that he couldn't recall anything. Lily playfully said, "Lord Lloyd, I felt the broken pendant you wear, so I rushed here to find you. When I heard Lord Lloyd had returned to the demon fortress, I immediately came back just to see you safe and to hear about your accomplishments." Lord Lloyd single-handedly defeated the hero of humanity, forcing the Imperial army to retreat from demon territory. Truly, Lord Lloyd is so cool. I wish I could hold you forever. Lloyd listened to the lieutenant's recounting, understanding that if it weren't for the pendant that Lieutenant 11 had sent, he might have perished on the battlefield. As he absorbed the information, Lloyd felt a mix of joy and fear. The hero he once cried out to had now become the new champion, which left him feeling despondent. He coldly turned away from Lieutenant 11. The lieutenant, panicking, looked at Lily and said, "Lord Lloyd truly is terrifying." He walked away without a word. "Shouldn't we keep our distance for safety?" Instantly, Lily's face lit up with innocence. Lord Lloyd is simply amazing. Whatever Lord Lloyd does, as long as it's him, it's all good. At this moment, the lieutenant only wished to escape from this chaos. In his room, Lloyd pondered what that dog emperor wanted. He had clearly agreed to his terms. Yet, he allowed his brother to attack the demon clan. All he clings to now are fragmented memories. The only thing he remembers clearly is seeing the Demon King signaling him to return to the human world, to gather useful information for the Empire, and to mark his position with magic. In the demon world, he is a spy, and upon returning to the Empire, he remains a spy. So what is he truly? A pawn in their game. At this moment, the vice commander anxiously asked, "Lord Lloyd, shouldn't we set off for the human world now?" Ain looked at Lloyd with an expression of reluctance. Before coming here, the Demon King had asked him if he wished to become the vice commander of the 9 armies leading the rebellion. Ain had hesitated for a long time. If he became the vice commander, he would no longer be able to protect Lord Lloyd. He also couldn't always be by Lord Lloyd's side. Thus, Ain turned down the promotion. Seeing Lloyd's determination strengthened his resolve even more. Lloyd noticed Ain standing there in a daze and urged him to quickly prepare provisions for their journey to the human world. Before leaving, Lloyd specifically reminded Ain to take good care of himself. He genuinely worried that the spirited young Ain might not withstand the pressure and abandon his position as the Demon King's vice commander. Lloyd promised to bring back a mountain of snacks for Ain when he returned to the human world. Ain was deeply moved by Lloyd's words. What commander would care for his subordinate like this? During the days Lloyd was away, Ain resolved to work harder. When Lloyd returned, Ain would present himself with a completely new appearance before him. As Lloyd stepped out the door, the guards immediately assumed a ready stance, loudly questioning, "Do you wish to die? How dare you invade the Marquis Lloyd's residence?" Lloyd merely replied nonchalantly, "I'm just heading home. Is such a grand welcome really necessary?" As Lloyd crossed the threshold, all the servants in the manor bowed to welcome him, leaving Lloyd momentarily bewildered. Why make such a fuss? The steward, Bayo, was touched by the Marquis' safe return, but anxiously eyed the wound on Lloyd's face. As the steward felt a pang of sympathy for Lloyd, he brushed the steward's hand away, stating, "I'm old enough, there's nothing to worry about." The steward chuckled and replied, "You are now an outstanding Marquis." Then he kindly asked Lloyd, "Are you tired? Do you need to rest for a bit?" Lloyd affirmed that he was about to meet the Emperor. Rather than resting, what he wanted to know most was the situation concerning his brother, Kakashi. Meanwhile, Duke Lucas had learned of Lloyd's return to the manor. He inquired of Kakashi regarding his brother Lloyd's attitude. Kakashi informed him that he had entrusted the matter to the Assassins' Guild. The Duke sneered, "If the contract with the Assassins is discovered, who do you think the Emperor will blame?" "Little Lin, speak up," the Duke urged. "If the Marquis' whereabouts are revealed to the rebels, I reckon they'll be quite pleased to eliminate the Marquis." "Kakashi, you know what you must do, right?" Kakashi announced that he would immediately contact the rebel forces. Lucas, filled with curiosity, wondered about the strength of the one hailed as a hero by the Emperor. Both maids blushed at the sight of the Marquis in his white attire. If only a few accessories were added, would it enhance the Marquis' beauty even more? Nếu còn cầm một đóa hồng nữa, chắc chắn sẽ làm người ta phát điên. Lloyd trong trạng thái mơ màng, nhanh chóng tắm rửa và chỉnh trang. Nhưng ánh mắt của các hầu gái thật lạ, dường như đang khổ sở vì không biết nên chọn trang phục nào. Dù gì cũng chỉ là đồng phục trắng, có gì mà phải lăn tăn. Trước khi rời đi, Lloyd gửi lời cảm ơn chân thành đến quản gia vì đã quản lý mọi việc trong phủ rất chu đáo trong thời gian ngài vắng mặt. Quản gia nghe thấy hầu tước nói như vậy. Ông đáp rằng đó là trách nhiệm của mình, chỉ là tuổi đã cao cơ, thể đau nhức, cảm thấy hơi sức không còn. Thỉnh thoảng giữa đêm, một mình canh giữ căn phòng trống không mà không ngủ được. Ông dự định lần này khi hầu tước trở về sẽ bàn về việc từ chức. Lloyd nghe vậy thì ngẩn người. Quản gia Bèo là một nhân tài xuất sắc tốt nghiệp từ khoa quản lý của đế quốc. Dù là quản lý nhân lực hay tài lực, ông đều rất tài ba. Quan trọng nhất là quản gia không cần nhận lương thường, còn hỗ trợ chi phí cho phủ nữa. Vì vậy, Lloyd đã nói nhẹ nhàng với ông. Quản gia Bèo có cần suy nghĩ kỹ lại không? Lúc này quản gia chỉ cười đùa. Đã lâu không gặp hầu tước, chỉ muốn xem biểu hiện hoảng hốt của ngài. Đây là niềm vui duy nhất của tôi ở cái tuổi này. Lloyd tức giận trong lòng, nhưng không biết phải bùng nổ sự tức giận này vào đâu. Trước khi lên đường, Lloyd chỉ dẫn theo vài vệ sĩ. Trên xe ngựa, khi nghĩ đến ma vương và hoàng đế, hai thực thể đáng sợ, lòng ngài chợt dâng trào những suy nghĩ. Hoàng đế hiện tại, Godzilla, người không phải là bị triệu hồi bởi tiên đế. Trong quá khứ, là một trong 118 hoàng tử, hắn đã tự tay giết tất cả 1/7 anh chị em của mình. Máu của các hoàng tử công chúa đã nhuộm đỏ từng tấc đất của vương quốc Godzilla với chiếc vương miện trên đầu. Dù đã qua 10 năm, cảnh tượng đó vẫn còn sống động trong tâm trí mọi người. Ngay khi Godzilla thành lập vương quốc, hắn đã biến nó thành đế quốc, lấy danh nghĩa đế quốc mà phát động xâm lược vào các vương quốc xung quanh. Và chính vào lúc đó, cuộc sống của bản thân cũng đã có sự chuyển biến lớn. Cuộc chiến kéo dài suốt 10 năm, bản thân không lúc nào không chiến đấu hoặc bị ép buộc phải chiến đấu, khiến ký ức cũng trở nên rời rạc. Trong cuộc chiến này, 1/3 lãnh thổ của đại lục nhân loại đã bị đế quốc nuốt chửng. Hoàng đế Godzilla cũng trở thành người khai phá cho đế quốc và tôi cũng đã lập công lớn trong cuộc chiến đó. Trở thành hầu tước danh dự, khi Lloyd nghĩ về thế giới ma quái, chiếc xe ngựa rung lắc mạnh. Ngài nhìn thấy vệ sĩ và kẻ thù đang giao chiến. Dấu hiệu trên cánh tay kẻ thù đó là quân nổi loạn. Nếu không hành động ngay, bodyguards might not be able to hold out any longer. Just then, an assassin lunged at Lloyd, gripping his throat and snarling, "Emperor's dog." "At last I found you." Lloyd gazed at the rebel before him, his eyes reflecting a hint of sympathy. To expand his territory, the Emperor devoured dozens of nations, causing the displaced to be blinded by fury. They willingly gathered to form a rebellion right before him. The rebels scurried about like rats crossing the road. They could only resort to trivial acts that wouldn't cause pain to annoy the Emperor. But why do they seek me out, calling me a hero? A hero, indeed, Lloyd hastily retorted. I am Lloyd, not the hero you think I am. The rebels were seething with indignation within. Even if I were blind, I couldn't mistake you for someone else. At that moment, Lloyd drew a dagger and lunged forward. The rebels looked at Lloyd with disdain. You dare call yourself a hero? Truly, all tales are mere fabrications. Lloyd is no match for a warrior, just a pawn released by the Emperor's dog. If there's anyone to blame, it's that wretched Emperor. Suddenly, an arrow sliced through the air, striking the rebel's axe. The axe clattered to the ground, a resounding echo trailing behind the rebels. Today promises to be quite entertaining. They are the dreaded Demon Knights, instilling terror in the hearts of many. Born in the chaotic era of the Empire founded by Lloyd, they share traits with Lloyd's second persona, but with one striking difference. This demonic army is led by the second persona. They revel in brutality. Wherever there is chaos, there they shall be. The rebels are starting to contemplate a retreat, but they are determined to eliminate Lloyd first before escaping this perilous situation. At that moment, the rebel felt his arm severed, flesh flying as he desperately pushed Lloyd away, his eyes wide in disbelief at the sight of his own limb. The wound revealed the bone beneath. Lloyd stepped forward, addressing the rebel. What a pity. Just a little more, and I could shatter your arm into pieces. What a pity. I will swiftly turn you into a masterpiece." With a hiss, the demonic army regained their composure as Lloyd slowly descended from the carriage, seemingly missing something vital. That's right, something is still lacking here to make it truly perfect. Yes, like this. The demonic army was captivated by the captain's extraordinary manipulation. It seems our masterpiece is still missing a crucial element. In that very moment, the demonic army noticed the bodyguards behind them. The bodyguards, eyes wide with terror, were also drawn to the noise. Are there enemies as well? Let them become part of the artwork too. Soon enough, the carriage arrived at the emperor's palace, with the bodyguards looking utterly astonished. The carriage was drenched in blood. A man clad in white, dripping with crimson, stepped down and hastily intervened, declaring, "This is the palace. Without the emperor's summons, you cannot enter." Lloyd smiled warmly. "Don't you know who I am?" At that moment, the guards realized and immediately informed Lloyd that the emperor had been waiting for him in the banquet hall. As Lloyd stepped into the hall, he saw his brother, a figure he both loved and hated, at his most vulnerable moment. In his most agonizing moment, he sought help from the one closest to him, only to find that this very person had turned against him. As Lloyd entered the banquet hall, a profound silence enveloped the space. No one dared to believe that he had returned. He walked past Kakashi, feeling the power of the fragments. It seemed his brother truly held the power of the fragments, becoming the new hero of the empire. The surrounding nobles and lords, upon seeing Lloyd covered in blood, confirmed the rumors that he was the vampire Marcus. Duke Lucas sighed silently in resignation. It seemed that the rumors about Lloyd being on par with the legendary hero were not entirely unfounded. The emperor looked at Lloyd with a glimmer of delight in his eyes. "My beloved Lloyd, let's find a proper place to talk," he said, settling into the sofa while secretly reveling in his heart. Lloyd had been a vanguard in battle for many years, even standing alongside the hero who had laid the hero's body to rest. Most importantly, despite losing to the Demon King, he had not been cast aside as mere fodder for monsters. Instead, he had successfully infiltrated the enemy's ranks. The emperor inquired with concern, "Have you found a way to lift the curse?" Lloyd replied, "Nothing at all." The emperor mused, "You don't think the magic sealed within your body is the curse that weakens you, do you?" Then the emperor remarked, "Lloyd, you should take a step back. That's where your true growth lies." Lloyd stood still, just returned from the realm of monsters, now being asked to go back. He immediately confronted the emperor. "What do you mean by sending assassins to the Demon King's territory to kill me? He's merely a backup hero," the emperor dismissed. "That one is nothing but a useless fool. He lives only to tarnish the title of hero. Haven't you benefited from his presence, solidifying your position in Maquis? Captain Lloyd, what do you think?" The emperor continued, "Oh dear, it seems the Demon King has truly given too much. It's impossible to refuse." The emperor added, "I am praising you, Lloyd. You must consider this. No one has ever infiltrated their inner circle. This is a rare opportunity for you to seize." Just then, a second personality emerged, questioning the emperor about why Kakashi was granted the title of hero, stating that he was the only survivor from his family. "Indeed, he is the only survivor in my hands," Lloyd reflected. A frail boy from a young age, with white hair and red eyes, had been held captive by his parents in Fadi. Facing the whispers of the servants about Lloyd possibly not being the true heir, but rather a descendant of vampires, he felt a deep turmoil within. Lloyd often dreamed of having black eyes and green hair, wishing he could escape the burden of being treated differently. The boy, Lloyd, overwhelmed by insecurities, gazed at the family photo, where only a sliver of warmth remained in his heart. His only joy came from following his brother, Kakashi, feeling a sense of safety and happiness in his presence. Staring at the family picture, he felt a flicker of warmth. His sole delight was to trail behind his brother, Kakashi, enveloped in that feeling of security and happiness. Yet he faced a stern father and a mother who always insisted on keeping Lloyd close to home. As long as Lloyd could grow up healthy, nothing else mattered. Compared to his exceptional brother, Lloyd's existence felt like a vast chasm of inadequacy. Thus, his father decided to take him to the emperor's banquet this time, hoping Lloyd could somehow bring honor to the family. His father's gaze was filled with love and glimmers of hope directed at his brother, which only deepened Lloyd's feelings of inferiority. As he matured, Lloyd ventured down a path of irreversible actions. This incident sowed the seeds of profound tragedy. At the emperor's banquet, his white hair and ruby-red eyes quickly drew the attention of a few mischievous kids. Initially, Lloyd naively believed he had found friends. His carefree childhood soon met a harsh reality as some of the children revealed their true, devilish natures. From cold jeers to later taunts, young Lloyd could only respond with fury, shaking his tiny fists in defiance, questioning why they spoke such nonsense. In response, Lloyd was met with nothing but cold punches. The frail boy was pinned to the ground, each blow landing harshly upon his face. Helpless, he could only endure their ridicule as they called him a monster. It was at this moment that Kakashi noticed his younger brother was being assaulted. He hurried over, alarmed to see his brother in such a state. News of Lloyd's beating quickly spread within the family. Never before had there been a descendant so weak. Amidst his mother's sorrow, Lloyd's attention was drawn more to his father's face. It seemed that his father despised him even more. At that moment, Kakashi grasped Lloyd's hand. Lloyd thought his brother was there to offer comfort, but instead, he said, "No one expects anything from you." From that day on, Lloyd was confined to his room, forbidden from stepping outside. Watching his parents and brother share laughter and joy outside the window, Lloyd felt like an outsider. This situation continued until he grew up. The only person who visited him daily was a servant, reminding him when it was time to eat. Perhaps his sole joy lay in the moments spent with Kakashi. It was only then that Lloyd could glean information about his parents, who his brother always said were very busy. Aware that it was a kind lie, Lloyd didn't dare to expose the truth. In reality, his mother often stealthily stood by his bed at night. But it was all right after all. He was just someone who could be easily forgotten. Just then, two officials entered. Tatasu, filled with anger, stood up to question them about their identities. The emperor had commanded Lloyd to be summoned to the battlefield. The young boy was dragged outside by the officers. Kakashi hurriedly intervened, but the officer pushed him aside. "Your family has submitted an official request to the royal court. We are merely following orders. You should speak with your parents." Panic surged through Lloyd as he realized his parents intended to send him to the battlefield. The news hit Lloyd like a thunderclap, shattering his world. His parents were fully aware of his frail condition, and sending him to war meant certain death. Why didn't his brother stop them? As he turned back, the cold door felt like a razor-sharp blade piercing deep into his heart, making him acutely aware of his unworthiness to be loved. Chilling truth sliced through Lloyd's heart like a dagger, revealing his deep-seated belief that he was unworthy of love. It became painfully clear that everyone wished for his disappearance. On his first day at the battlefield, Lloyd gripped his sword tightly. The weight of the sword was suffocating, leaving Lloyd gasping for breath. Yet the soldiers in the camp were puzzled by his presence. A nobleman like him, assigned to the front lines. With such a frail body, he was destined to fall on the very first day of combat. The very mention of death ignited Lloyd's determination to survive. Day after day, his comrades fell around him, and the once timid boy was now trapped in a living hell. Until he emerged, since then, the battlefield had been graced by a god of death. Every enemy that stood before him fell, lifeless and cold. The paralyzing scenes of war made Lloyd yearn for home. Over the years of conflict, his longing for home had dulled but never faded. As he gazed at the letters from home, the eyes of others sparkled with joy. Meanwhile, he awaited a response, only to receive orders for a frontline command. Now, Lloyd had made a vow. He would turn the home that once belonged to him into a living hell. Returning to his former home, Lloyd took it upon himself to slay the father who had condemned him to this nightmare. Gazing at his mother in despair on the ground, he wielded the dagger without hesitation. At that moment, Lloyd felt a mix of joy and agony within him. But why the pain? Just then, Kakashi opened the door. With tears streaming down his face, Lloyd looked at his parents and brother lying on the ground, crying out, "Help me, I'm in so much pain. Who will help you now?" In a flash, Lloyd lunged at Kakashi, who quickly raised his defenses. You've done nothing but watch from the sidelines all this time." In the depths of his true self, there was a desperate urge for Kakashi to put an end to him. If only he could descend into hell, all this pain would vanish. Exhausted, Lloyd finally began to collapse. Just as Kakashi raised his weapon to finish him, a voice rang out. "My lord," the Marquis, jolting Lloyd back to reality. It was none other than Reina, the leader of the Demon Legion. Old Ed looked at Kakashi with his green eyes and dark hair, attributes he could never possess in his lifetime. At that moment, Kakashi couldn't help but exclaim, "In the demon realm, I met the legendary commander of the Legion. The appearance of the enemy had unleashed an unimaginable power in the demon realm. But it made me think of you. Is Kakashi deliberately testing me? Does he know that I am the leader of the army? I am indeed the army's commander. No matter what Kakashi says, if I were part of their army, my troops' fighting spirit would rival that of our foes." At that moment, Old Ed couldn't help but chuckle. "What the hell is this? Do you want me to train to draw attention? My dear brother, I don't need to be like you." Kakashi stared coldly into Lloyd's icy gaze. Indeed, it remained as frigid as ever, merciless towards everything. Lloyd, who wanted to speak but held back, turned to gaze at the banquet table overflowing with food, picking up a large box of pudding and beginning to eat. This familiar taste had been absent for 15 long years. This time, Kakashi truly was the persistent nuisance in my life. Right in that glorious moment, he had the audacity to ask if I was injured while slaying the monster. Even if I were hurt, I wouldn't show it in front of him. Lloyd chose to ignore Kakashi. Indulging in his pudding, at that moment, Duke Lucas appeared before him. Kakashi immediately bowed his head in greeting. Lucas extended his hand to Lloyd, but Lloyd silently turned away, prioritizing swallowing the pudding in his mouth first. This action left the nobles in the banquet hall astounded. Old Ed, merely a marquis by title, dared to display such attitude towards the empire's only duke. Truly, Lloyd embodied coldness and ruthlessness. Lloyd's icy demeanor made Lucas yearn to approach him immediately. Lucas's gaze spoke volumes. At that moment, the crown prince appeared, breaking the awkward tension as he stepped beside Lloyd, saying, "Don't be afraid, I am here." Faced with the crown prince, Lucas had no choice but to bow his head. This Lucas guy keeps lurking around Lloyd. Does he have some kind of scheme in mind? Lloyd could only brace himself for what was to come. Suddenly, from behind, someone wrapped their arms tightly around him. "My lord, you have finally returned. This time, I will hold you close," she declared. Everyone watched the scene unfold, their eyes wide with disbelief as they noticed the pools of blood on the ground. Lloyd inwardly lamented, realizing that the pudding he was about to swallow was now forcefully expelled by the princess' powerful embrace. Rhina hastily covered Lloyd's mouth. "Don't say another word, or we'll be exposed," she urged. "I understand your feelings." The commotion had drawn the emperor's attention. Next to him stood the empire's greatest hero, while the princess of the kingdom felt a deep sense of guilt. If only she had been just a bit stronger, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. Curiosity filled the air as everyone wondered, was Old Ed really a hero? Just because he bumped into the princess, he ended up spitting blood. The emperor beside him explained that on his way to the palace, he had been attacked, and it was certain his insides were injured, coupled with sheer exhaustion. Lloyd vẫn muốn giải thích rằng đây chỉ là một cái bánh pudding, nhưng hoàng đế đã lên tiếng yêu cầu Lloyd trở về nhà trước. Ông ấy đang mang trên mình lời nguyền của ma vương, ngay cả khi quần áo của cung điện đến cũng chẳng làm được gì. Lloyd cũng chỉ còn cách chấp nhận. Dù sau này có người phát hiện ra đây là pudding cũng không sao. Bỗng nhiên một cơn chóng mặt ập đến. Một mũi tên lóe lên, một người nắm chặt lấy Lloyd. Lloyd nhìn sang định nói cảm ơn thì bỗng chốc ngẩn ra, tại chỗ vội vàng hất tay Kakashi ra. Gương mặt Lloyd hiện rõ sự chán ghét. Tại sao Kakashi lúc nào cũng phải tỏ ra quan tâm đến mình? Mình đã nhiều lần sống chết nơi chiến trường, sao giờ này hắn mới đến quan tâm? Ngày trước bị ép phải ra trận sao không ngăn cản? Hoàng đế nhẹ nhàng vỗ vai Lloyd, vẻ lo lắng hiện rõ trên mặt khiến Lloyd nhanh chóng trở về nghỉ ngơi. Có vẻ như mọi người đều rất ghét hắn đã bắt đầu đặt cược vào kẻ thù. Hắn không nên đến đây. Lucas liếc nhìn Kakashi, lộ vẻ mặt đầy suy tư. Lucas thử hỏi Kakashi, em trai của anh đang quậy phá tại buổi tiệc của anh sao? Anh không giải quyết luôn cho xong. Kakashi không muốn làm mọi chuyện trở nên phức tạp. Lucas ánh mắt lộ chút thương hại. Hồi đó khi Kakashi cầu cứu hắn, cha mẹ đã bị em trai Lloyd hành hạ đến tột cùng. Hồi ấy Lucas hỏi Kakashi sao lại tìm đến mình. Kakashi cúi đầu nhẹ nhàng nói, tôi muốn bảo vệ. Ngày ấy Lucas còn nghi ngờ sự bảo vệ của Kakashi là gì, nhưng sau khi chứng kiến sự điên cuồng của Lloyd, hắn đã hiểu rằng Kakashi thực sự cần sự bảo vệ. Khi Kakashi đã trở thành chó trung thành của ta, làm sao ta có thể để cậu chịu bất cứ tổn thương nào? Khi trở về tòa lâu đài Lloyd, từ xa đã ngửi thấy mùi khét. Hắn thấy trước sân có một đám đông tụ tập lửa cháy rực rỡ. Họ đang xếp hàng ngay trước cửa nhà ta sao? Khi Lloyd nhìn thấy người của quân đoàn quỷ, hắn hơi nghi ngờ đôi mắt của mình. Hắn lập tức quát. Đồ khốn, sao các người lại chơi trò ghê tởm ngay trước cửa nhà ta? Người của quân đoàn quỷ còn đang định biện minh thì một quả bom bỗng nhiên xuất hiện trong tay Lloyd. Cảm giác mượt mà ấy như viên pudding chưa kịp nuốt. Rainer bên cạnh vội vàng nói, đàn ông chính là bom. Lloyd hoảng hốt ném quả bom ra phía trước. Khi quả bom chạm đất, một quả cầu lửa khổng lồ bùng nổ. Lloyd cảm thán, đồ chơi của quân đoàn quỷ ngày càng tinh vi. Không biết lần sau họ sẽ chơi trò gì nữa. Ngay lúc đó, một người đàn ông đứng dậy từ nơi bom nổ nói, quả thật là một người đáng gờm, chỉ cần cảm nhận là có thể ném lại quả bom nguyên vẹn. Mọi người xung quanh đều thở phào nhẹ nhõm, nếu không phải quả bom nổ vào chính họ. Khi nhìn thấy biểu tượng trên cánh tay của người đàn ông là quân nổi loạn, người của quân đoàn quỷ càng thêm phấn khích. Như thể đây là dấu hiệu từ lão đại sau này nhất định phải học theo lão đại mà chơi. Lloyd tức giận nói, sao các người lại ở đây? Rõ ràng đã phân các người đi đến LOWKEY. So you all had such a grand time in the Knights Brigade that you ended up getting kicked out to Prang. A member of the Demon Brigade clung to Lloyd. We live as your servants and die as your souls. You can't utter such hurtful words. Furious, he began to reprimand them, while Lloyd clutched his chest, his heart racing, desperately wanting to escape this place. At that moment, fear gripped him. The rebellion was not only lying in wait for him, but also aimed to steal his very home. He questioned himself, what sins have I committed? Yet, at this very moment, Elder Ed discovered that one of the rebels still lived. Observing the rebel's limp form, he was about to order him to leave. Suddenly, the butler descended like a brilliant ray of light from the heavens. In the blink of an eye, he had subdued the rebel. The butler thought to himself, surely, the master will be impressed by my gallant display. Seeing the master's astonished expression filled him with satisfaction. Lloyd was equally astonished. The butler, who usually appeared frail, moved with such decisiveness. Noticing Lloyd's haggard face, the butler sensed something was amiss and resolved to inquire further after a mere half-day had passed. After learning all that had transpired that day, the butler promptly instructed the servants to send Lloyd to rest. Meanwhile, the rebels gritted their teeth, watching Lloyd's retreating figure, intent on toppling the tyrant Godzilla. The first step was to eliminate one of his three right-hand men, Lloyd. Next on the list were the hero Shuku and the cunning Prime Minister Avatar, who always plotted schemes. When the Demon Brigade heard the rebels refer to Lloyd as if he were the Emperor's meat, their anger boiled over, and one swift strike felled the rebel. The butler observed the lifeless body of the fallen rebel, now devoid of vitality. Contemplating how to report to their benevolent master, Lloyd had expected a return to the castle filled with leisure. Instead, a mountain of documents awaited him, making it utterly impossible to complete. At this moment, the butler was like a teacher, occasionally checking on Lloyd's situation. After witnessing the butler's gentle demeanor, the word refusal vanished from Lloyd's vocabulary. Furthermore, the Demon Brigade and the knights in the castle seemed to engage in constant bickering or shouting every single day. Just by looking at the Demon Brigade, it was clear who was stirring up trouble. This relentless pressure made Lloyd want to surrender completely. Moreover, the butler continued to prattle on, praising the Emperor's wisdom one moment and extolling the Demon Brigade as indispensable talent the next. Hearing the butler sing praises for the Demon Brigade, Lloyd couldn't help but agree they truly were rare talents. Yet this pile of documents still belonged to the Lloyd family's territory. He pondered whether the Emperor had indeed returned the family's lands to him. Butler mentioned that after attending the banquet, The emperor had completely reallocated the family's territory under his name. Elder Ed was utterly flabbergasted. The emperor had broken his promise. It was clear they had previously agreed to let him become a noble on the border. The noble's honor at the border was akin to a marquess for him. The territory of his clan felt like mere scraps of meat. This irked him deeply. It seemed that he truly needed to speak to the emperor for clarity. Just then, a guard suddenly reported the arrival of the prince and the general. In the grand hall, the prince and Shuku saw Lloyd's entire family. The truth revealed itself. Lloyd was a man who cherished his family. The guard led the prince into the study. The prince cheerfully pondered how to initiate the conversation. Before arriving, his sister Alay wore an unhappy expression that unnerved him. Even though 7 days had passed since the incident with the princess, Alay felt that all her efforts had been in vain. Moreover, she had resorted to the beauty trap. She had replayed that scene in her mind countless times. Who would have thought that someone as strong as Lloyd would be wounded by such a fragile girl? Alay felt a deep sense of regret about this. Just as she was about to summon Lloyd to the palace, Alay believed it would be better to apologize to him in person. However, the prince firmly rejected his sister's idea, fearing a potential scandal. Besides, his sister truly did not love Lloyd. Alay insisted, "For the sake of the royal family, I could feign love for him." As long as her brother's position was more stable, Alay was willing to play the role of a foolish princess in the eyes of others. If Alay and Lloyd could marry, there would be no worries about the prince's succession. This would provide the nobles with a reason to stir trouble. Furthermore, as long as she became a lady of the castle, she would hold all the power within the estate, supporting her brother's rise to the throne. Despite this, the prince advised his sister to abandon the idea if she didn't want to put in the effort. But she was determined to investigate Lloyd's true feelings towards her. At this moment, the general stood beside the prince, who was lost in thought. Lloyd looked genuinely terrified. Why were these two here together? The prince glanced at Lloyd and explained that their meeting with the general on the way to the castle had been purely coincidental. Elder Ed caught a glimpse of Shuka's gaze. Sensing the revulsion and hatred emanating from him, the prince spoke up, saying that he was here to apologize for his sister Alay's disrespectful actions towards Elder Ed. Elder Ed waved it off, saying, "It's nothing, really. No need to worry." The prince felt that the atmosphere was starting to shift. He stated that he had a favor to ask of him. This sentence sent Lloyd into a state of sheer panic. In the next heartbeat, Lloyd received a friend request from the prince. Doubts clouded his mind. Was the prince unwell? Why else would he come all this way for something so trivial? Observing the prince's awkward demeanor, Lloyd couldn't help but feel suspicious. And what of the general beside him? If he refused, would they truly draw their swords? Trembling, Lloyd replied, "It would be an honor to be friends with the prince." As the prince received Lloyd's agreement, his smile shone as brilliantly as the sun. Lloyd thought to himself, "Today is the happiest day of my life." The prince sensed Lloyd's joy too and mentioned that in the future, when Lloyd visited the palace, they would practice swordplay together. After that, they would enjoy tea and share their thoughts. Before leaving, the prince gently took Lloyd's small hand and urged him to visit the palace often. He would eagerly await each encounter with Lloyd. In the living room, Lloyd and Shuku stood frozen in place. Lloyd thought to himself, "What should I say that makes sense?" At that moment, Shuku revealed the purpose of this trip. The emperor wanted to capture the rebel forces that were apprehended a week ago, aiming to dismantle their base and eradicate them completely. Of course, the emperor also mentioned that it was perfectly fine if the captain declined. He only asked whether my sword would agree. Lloyd fell silent and led the way. Soon, Lloyd had delivered the rebel forces to Shuku, who looked at the captured rebels with suspicion and challenged Lloyd about the 3 captives, one of whom had died from a bomb. Then how did the other one die? Please answer me clearly. Shuku stared at Lloyd, involuntarily recalling the battle from years past. Back then, Shuku was astonished that a noble had been sent to the front lines to die. This piqued Shuku's interest particularly. At that time, Shuku felt a deep sorrow for Lloyd. In his eyes, there was a flood of weakness, and his expression lacked any semblance of vitality. Suddenly, Lloyd seemed to transform into a different person. His eyes were filled with cold indifference and malice, like a demon risen from the depths of hell. In other words, this child had a split personality. Little did he know, this revelation sent chills down Shuka's spine. In that moment, Lloyd coldly regarded Shuku, saying, "I don't know what you're talking about. Right now, all I see is you. You are the enemy, aren't you?" Upon hearing this, Shuku turned away without a glance back and left. Indeed, this mad dog had never been stable. Why did the Emperor keep such a dangerous element close by? What could be the reason? When Lloyd returned to the kingdom, he found the butler standing nearby. The butler approached and said, "My lord, the monsters at the front line are wreaking havoc. Should we send the Demon Legion to exterminate the monsters at the border?" Thinking of the frenzied Demon Legion, Lloyd immediately agreed without hesitation. He even instructed the butler to set out right away. In a daze, Lloyd found himself somewhere. What the hell was going on? Why was he at the border? Looking ahead, he saw Raina buzzing with enthusiasm. Lloyd questioned the Demon Lord suspiciously. "Why am I here?" The Demon Lord replied, "Such an exciting event. We believe the captain would surely find it intriguing. Sitting idle all day in the Marcus Castle is hardly enjoyable. It's been a while since we last met. Surely the captain must feel bored too." Lloyd thought to himself, "Stop talking nonsense. I clearly want to refuse." But that guy clung to his leg and began to whine, babbling about how everyone was family, all the while dragging him into deadly chaos and arson. Even the butler advised him to go out for a change of scenery. The demon legions, their bulging muscles rippling, felt a stirring in their hearts at the butler's unwavering loyalty. They too wished to bring back the missing butler. Yet, they were blissfully unaware that he and I had conspired beforehand. This journey was designed to flush out the hidden rats lurking within the Marcus's estate. While Lloyd had once harbored doubts, witnessing the butler's miraculous feats made him feel a pang of sympathy for the rodents hiding in the manor. However, perhaps it was for the best. Such feelings were a welcome change from the daily dread of an assassin's surprise attack that could end his life. He truly was overstepping his bounds. At that moment, the Demon Legion began to chatter and laugh. Isn't the captain the only one who ventured into the demon realm, and did he not fight against the Demon King and trample the demon legions? Lloyd could only wonder who this person was, spreading stories about him all day long. Just then, a horde of monsters appeared before the Demon King. While an ordinary person might flee in terror, this was the Demon King. Seeing these monsters felt like spotting gold coins scattered on the ground. Lloyd suddenly recalled his days in the demon realm. Even as a mere gardener, he could sustain a poet's life, yet this did not detract from the vibrant existence in the demon realm. It seemed this was the essence of a normal life. Meanwhile, Raina took a deep breath, and Lloyd felt a twinge of guilt. Had I not made my request to the Emperor at that time, with Raina's prowess, he would have likely been leading a legion by now. Curiously, Raina turned to Lloyd and asked if he would join the battle this time. Lloyd replied that they should let the troops relax first after all. They had been under pressure for far too long. In the heat of battle, the Demon Legion almost turned on each other over the monsters. Moreover, as they slashed at the creatures, the Legion shouted, "Captain, come join the fun." Lloyd hastily gestured for Raina to join in, while she shyly lowered her head beside him. A sudden shattering sound caught Lloyd's attention. At that moment, as he turned, a chilling arrow struck him squarely. Just as he was hit, the guards on the wall noticed the commotion. Is that the Marquise, the one hailed as a hero by the Empire? Had they been arguing with those people? The battle had barely ended. It seemed the Marquise had sustained serious injuries. Wait, if so, couldn't we just accuse the Demon Legion of attacking us? Surely our kingdom could demand substantial compensation from the Empire. Old Ed gazed toward the assassin lurking in the bushes, particularly intrigued by the archer wielding a sword. He ordered the Demon Legion to ensure the archer remained alive. Raina urged Lloyd to tend to his wound first. Without hesitation, he snapped the arrow and instructed the Demon Legion to retrieve the special artifact. Amidst Raina's panic, the entire Demon Legion devoured the artifact. Lloyd smiled, knowing this was a treasure that could induce extreme stimulation. As soon as it appeared before the enemy, they would be overwhelmed. Little did they know, the assassin was far more formidable than they imagined, and this was no simple task. Instantly, Elder Aid brandished his long sword and charged straight at Lloyd. With a leap, he soared into the air, positioning himself above the assassin. Looking down at his target, his eyes sparkled with excitement. This was truly a feast from the heavens. With a simple somersault, he had the assassin under control. He commanded the undead to swiftly deal with the remaining assassins. Those who dared to resist were overwhelmed by the undead's ferocity. In that moment, the very air was thick with the scent of blood. Elder Aid issued a command to Lena. Keep an eye on that dying assassin. Don't let him perish, or there will be no more shows for us to witness. At this moment, as the undead troops hesitated, Elder Aid roared in anger. What are you all doing? Don't think that just because you've become knights now, you can fight like real warriors. You will forever remain mere rabid dogs of the undead. Showing mercy to your enemies is nothing but cruelty towards yourself. If you have even a shred of compassion, do you truly believe you deserve to live in this world? The morale of the undead was entirely dictated by their captain. We fight to survive. The assassin had begun to react. These beings were truly worse than devils. It was all because that man had demanded too much. Clearly, this wasn't a mission to attack, but to annihilate the adversary, and they were expected to pay half the price for the injured. It was better to retreat after a failed strike than to stand and fight. Kakashi understood this well. At the previous banquet, a confrontation had erupted between the Duke and his brother. After the feast, the Duke had begun to harbor suspicions about him. Although his brother was the one he hated most, he had once been the closest to him. His fate could only be decided by himself. The assassin watched Lloyd as he swung his dagger. Before him, one of his subordinates had fallen. The assassin's eyes, as red as blood, were more terrifying than the blood that flowed. Seconds turned into minutes, and the trembling of the assassin on the ground grew more frantic. It was only now that he realized just how foolish he had been, falling into this predicament for a mere handful of coins. At this moment, Elder Aid slowly turned to look at the last surviving assassin on the ground. The dagger in his hand clattered to the ground. Elder Aid silently regarded the assassin for 2 seconds, then spoke in a calm tone. I don't care who stands behind you. I will tear apart every inch of flesh on your body, one slice at a time. Meanwhile, in the royal palace, Godzilla heard a concerned minister report. My lord, the Count is engaged in battle with a group of suspects near the border and seems to be injured. The Ilion Kingdom took this opportunity to spread lies, claiming that the Count had attacked their fortress. As Godzilla heard news of Lloyd's injury, his brow furrowed involuntarily. It must be known that Lloyd was a powerful figure, on par with a hero. This was surely nonsense. He scoffed. Just a petty kingdom like Ilion dares to demand compensation from us. As Godzilla halted over some map, the High Priest felt an unsettling chill. He was about to voice his concerns, but Godzilla had already made his decision to unleash war upon the Ilion Kingdom, forcing them to pay in blood and tears. All he needed was to seize their riches and resources in this impending conflict. Remember, I am the tyrant. High Priest, do you wish to stand in my way? I have my own plans for conquering the continent. If the Ilion Kingdom enjoys their little dance, then let them be my target. Each day, as I slay my kin and ascend to the throne, I shall become the emperor. It is destined that I conquer the entire continent, forcing it to kneel at my feet, to become my subjects and aid me in my grand endeavor. Noticing the High Priest trembling in fear, Godzilla pondered briefly before asking, Hiru, have you heard of the Salvation Cult? This faction is rapidly expanding within the slums. The battle is about to commence, and this dangerous element must be eliminated as soon as possible. What do you think about letting Lloyd handle this? Just then, Hiru voiced his objections to Godzilla. He believed that Lloyd was too ruthless with his enemies, which prompted his dissent. Meanwhile, Hiru revealed the secret lurking within Lloyd. He possesses 2 personalities. One is timid, and the other is a man consumed by madness. The existence of these 2 contrasting traits within a single individual is an uncontrollable factor, simultaneously posing an extremely deadly threat. If we're not careful, he could become a rabid dog, turning against his own master. Heru hoped the emperor would consider his options carefully. Godzilla spoke slowly. I'm aware of what you say. Heru, taken aback, tried to persuade the emperor to retract his orders. At that moment, Godzilla raised his hand, causing Heru to halt in his tracks. Even if I have declared myself a tyrant, when facing the subordinates of Aishi, I can easily transform into a holy warrior. Despite your current disrespect towards me, I shall not hold it against you. Seeing the worry and sorrow etched on Hira's face, Godzilla remarked, we cannot afford to keep dangerous individuals close. When Lloyd, a figure of great merit in the past, proposed to eliminate his own family, I had no reason to refuse such an unreasonable demand. After all, I have already become an enemy in the eyes of a powerful family. As a form of exchange, Lloyd must accompany the hero to slay the Demon King. Lloyd has not disappointed me. He not only dealt with the hero's remains, but also displayed the resolve of a true hero. The only regret is that when Lloyd killed his parents, Kakashi returned home a little late, inadvertently saving her from a calamity. But it turned out well. Now she has become a good wife who can keep Lloyd in check. If Lloyd wishes to rid himself of Kakashi, he cannot do so without my assistance. As for Kakashi, for the sake of survival, she will choose to become Lucas' dog. Thinking of these two siblings, destined to love and slay each other for eternity, it truly is a fascinating piece of art. The man, outwardly timid like a mouse, was in truth a ruthless demon, merciless in his slaughter. Just a second ago, he was performing a classic scene, but now his gaze followed the stream of warm blood, tinged with hesitation. Vivid memories, drenched in blood, flashed through his mind. The gruesome scene made his head spin. Just then, a man leaned close, covering his eyes, whispering softly into his ear, "You didn't do this." Old Ai, Det suddenly awoke, unaware of the dream he had just experienced. A sharp pain in his shoulder brought back memories of the border incident. Soon after, he returned to the Count's estate, reflecting on the perilous journey. Where had the steward gone? The steward, with an expression of calm, gazed at the captured spy. Having gathered the necessary information, there was no need to keep him alive. A carrier pigeon soared into the distance. Upon learning of Lloyd's return, the steward had begun to organize everything. Cautiously instructing his subordinates to closely follow the pigeon, he emphasized the need to uncover the mastermind behind this. At that moment, the steward quietly entered Lloyd's room. Their eyes met, and in that glance, the steward confirmed the identity of the assassin's instigator. It was the rebels or rival kingdoms, with Duke Lucas being the prime suspect. Lloyd analyzed every point with the steward, feeling a swell of happiness. Having an intelligent and wealthy steward was truly a blessing. As Lloyd returned to the palace, the princess joyfully rushed over, eager to embrace him. The crown prince awkwardly greeted Lloyd, who responded with the proper formalities. Moments later, the crown prince remarked, "Adet, we are friends. There's no need for such politeness." Witnessing the secretive collusion between the crown prince and the princess, Lloyd felt a wave of irritation wash over him. He claimed it was just tea, but was the princess' behavior a bit too excessive? Lloyd felt exhausted. Inside, had he known things would unfold this way, he should have arrived either earlier or later to avoid this awkwardness. At that moment, a sudden attack from above struck Lloyd in the mouth. The princess forced him to activate his protective function. The crown prince's demeanor shifted to one of concern as he said, "I heard you've been injured recently. Take care of your health. To ensure the emperor's long-term protection, I truly do not wish to be emperor. You must understand, I am merely 8 years younger than the emperor. If the emperor were to abdicate normally, I too would grow older. If anything were to happen, it would mean the empire's collapse." Old Idet appeared calm on the surface. Yet inside, his thoughts were in turmoil. Was this truly what he could hear growing? The current emperor, the 9th prince to ascend the throne, had personally slain all his siblings. He had even annihilated their heirs. What baffled him was why he spared only the crown prince and the princess. Moreover, these two before him bore no animosity toward their uncle. Rumors swirled that the crown prince and princess' father was a gentle prince, friendly, and not at all like the royal family, with a good relationship with the 9th prince. Before his passing, he sought out the 9th prince every day to care for his children. Their bond was not merely one of blood, but was closer than that of kin. There is a legend that if this prince were to survive, the ninth prince would not dare to rebel. The crown prince tightened his grip on Lloyd. A lie, do not put too much pressure on the esteemed count. Lloyd hurriedly sought an excuse to leave. The crown prince and princess watched Lloyd's retreating figure, both aware that the current situation was becoming increasingly tense. If the empire could not ally with a formidable force, the outcome could lead to significant upheaval. Ally understood the importance of Lloyd. The crown prince shared his sister's thoughts. Regardless of who stood before them, even the royal lineage would pay the price of annihilation. And then there was Lloyd, a being as powerful as a god, once again left wounded. Just moments ago, Lloyd was lost. He asked the person in front of him where he was, slowly approaching. He even attempted to force a friendly smile. To his surprise, the other party not only recoiled, but also drew a knife, plunging it into Lloyd. The assassin questioned where he had gone wrong. This path had been rehearsed countless times. It was ensured that no mistakes would lead to an ambush. The opponent turned out to be the legendary god of death. At that moment, Kakashi effortlessly lifted him up. Instinctively, Lloyd called out, "Kakashi!" Suddenly, Kakashi froze. It had been so long since he had heard that name. Upon seeing the wound on Lloyd's shoulder, Lloyd's eyes instantly sharpened. The assassin hastily begged for mercy. The papers scattered on the ground caught Lloyd's attention. At that moment, Lucas picked up a piece of paper. He curiously asked Lloyd if he was going to see the Emperor and praised him, stating that he truly lived up to his title as the god of death, as even a hint of murderous intent allowed him to detect the assassin infiltrating the palace. Lloyd felt a headache coming on clearly. He was just lost, and the crown prince and princess had arrived as well. Upon noticing the wound on Lloyd's shoulder and the blood flowing from his nose, they hastily called for a servant. Lloyd knew his body was about to cause trouble again. Kakashi, beside Lucas, explained that he was injured while capturing a spy. At that moment, the servant summoned by the crown prince rushed in with a box in hand. Upon seeing Lloyd amidst the crowd, the servant stood frozen, not only stunned but also bewildered. It must be noted that if anything happened to Lloyd, it was just one misstep at the previous banquet that had led to the highest-ranking figures of the empire surrounding him, questioning him. Lloyd thought to himself that he only needed a little bandaging. Was it really necessary for everyone to panic like this? The servant silently prayed to the heavens for the esteemed count to be safe and live long in harmony with the universe. At that moment, the crown prince anxiously asked the servant, "How is the esteemed count's condition?" Just after addressing the crown prince, Kakashi seized the servant by the collar, interrogating, "Have you truly checked everything thoroughly?" Just at that moment, Hiru suddenly appeared, revealing that Lloyd's injury was caused by the curse of the Demon Lord. Coldly, he stated that the Emperor had ordered Lloyd to be examined. Lloyd couldn't help but notice Hiru's icy gaze, sensing that this man harbored ill intentions towards him. Before departing, Lloyd turned back and said, "Your Highness, there's no need for such formality." The crown prince clenched his fists, a deep sense of helplessness surging within him. It seemed that Lloyd had realized this curse was incurable, relieving everyone of their worries for him. He had always been such a kind-hearted person, yet people avoided him, openly ridiculing and slandering him. Meanwhile, on the carriage, Lucas reflected on the documents he had previously reviewed. He had stated that war would not be initiated in the near future, but it appeared that the external situation was far from clear. For his own sake and for the Empire, he felt compelled to lend a helping hand. Godzilla observed the haggard expression on Lloyd's face. Despite being the Emperor, he was powerless to enact change. At the banquet, when Lloyd arrived, he was drenched in blood. Desra was profoundly moved by that sight. Furthermore, during their private meeting, he discovered that Lloyd had been struck by a curse from the Demon Lord, an unbreakable hex. Later, at the grand banquet hall, Lloyd was overwhelmed by pressure, coughing up blood in the grand hall. That damned formal attire seemed to have vanished into thin air for some frivolous escapades. By the time he arrived, Lloyd had long retreated to his castle to recuperate, leaving that cursed place behind. The kingdom seized the opportunity, exploiting Lloyd's battle with the injured assassin to demand reparations from our empire. Lloyd had just been stabbed by a hidden spy within the palace. Oh, my dear Lloyd, how can I ever compensate you for this pain? Little did Lloyd know, the Emperor had concocted a myriad of plans in less than 2 minutes. He had merely gone to relieve himself in a moment of urgency. At this time, Old Aide took a deep breath, gathering his courage to discuss with Godzilla the matter concerning the Yuan family's territory. Initially, Godzilla refused. However, upon seeing Lloyd's expression as if he were facing an enemy, Godzilla relented. Yet prior to that, he had laid down a condition: Lloyd must investigate the Relief Church and eradicate this wicked organization. At once, Lloyd felt that such a troublesome task should be declined. But Godzilla slowly spoke. I've assigned this task to your brother, Duke Lucas. Kakashi will also come to eliminate the Relief Church. If your brother succeeds in his mission, I will fulfill his wish. Upon hearing this, Lloyd couldn't contain himself. Godzilla immediately agreed. I cherish my subjects, Lloyd. Am eagerly anticipating your performance this time. Lloyd also realized that he had vaguely agreed to the Emperor's request. However, stopping Kakashi wasn't a bad idea either. Godzilla continued, this time, whoever completes their task first, I will grant their wish. Lloyd was determined to excel in his mission. He gazed at the elegantly adorned teacup on the table. In a moment of hesitation, curiosity tugged at the butler as he asked, why have you only brewed this beauty-enhancing tea recently? The butler replied, this tea was sent by the Crown Prince. I thought His Majesty would surely enjoy the tea that the Crown Prince sent. Old Aide recalled the beauty tea. He remembered the chaos in the palace where he had consumed far too much beauty tea and frantically searched for a restroom, nearly falling prey to an assassin. Then he was summoned by the Emperor and had to hold himself for what felt like an eternity. Your Majesty, this is a tonic that the Emperor had someone deliver to you. Knowing your health has been declining, the Emperor specifically requested the Western Palace to prepare this tonic just for you. Please drink it for your own health, and if you fear the bitterness. I have also prepared some sweet sugar. Just then, Lena entered, noticing Old Aide covering his mouth in discomfort. Lena brought news from the Relief Church for Lloyd. Upon learning that simply believing in the Relief Church could provide food, Lloyd found it quite strange, and a torrent of questions flooded his mind. The capable and wealthy butler beside him analyzed, this church must incur substantial costs. It certainly cannot be funded by ordinary nobles. There must be an invisible hand at work behind the scenes. Just then, Lloyd felt an urgent need to relieve himself. As he stood up, Lena was immediately moved. Your Majesty, you are indeed the exemplary captain who bravely fights on the front lines. Lloyd heard Lena wanting to follow him, but he chuckled. Sister, I'm just going to the restroom. So, Lloyd was led by Lena into the territory of the Relief Church. Inside, his heart raced like a stampede of horses. How could a simple trip to the restroom lead him to the Relief Church? Lena took out a refugee outfit to dress him up. Once dressed, Lloyd cautioned Lena that he needed to go to a secret place, hoping she would understand the importance of self-worth. However, no matter how fast she ran at 200 meters per second, she simply could not keep up with Lloyd's pressing need to go. Thinking of Lloyd's pale face, Lena couldn't help but recall the curse of the Demon King. Just as Lloyd broke free from the feeling of urgency, he felt a sense of joy wash over him. As he turned a corner, he encountered someone he shouldn't have met. Their eyes locked for a moment, and Lloyd instinctively embraced him lightly. The sensation of bleeding was uncontrollable. Damn this detestable person. The two brothers, once close, now met not in love or brotherhood, but in a clash of overwhelming hatred. Kakashi, his brother, fixated on Lloyd's arm. That cold gaze was enough to freeze a grown man in his tracks. Lloyd felt a tearing pain in his left shoulder. Realization struck him too late as cold sweat broke out. How could this be? Kakashi was the one behind the assassins. At that moment, Kakashi uttered the words Lloyd dreaded to hear. Survival may be a mistake. Lloyd wanted nothing more than to erase Kakashi from this world immediately. Your Majesty. Lena stood there, stunned at the scene. Isn't this the rising hero of the Empire? Kakashi Lloyd whispered, calling out to Lena. She felt the frailty of His Majesty. As the captain of Lloyd's night squad, she sensed she had failed to protect him well. Kakashi is utterly despicable, taking advantage of the king's weakness to launch a surprise attack. I will make that scoundrel bleed. Lena, step back. If Lena could eliminate Kakashi, it might be the best outcome, but she senses that Kakashi's strength poses a significant threat. Meanwhile, Kakashi and Lloyd come face to face. My dear, are you planning to sneak into the relief church? He asks. If you interfere, you might find yourself in danger, Kakashi says in a tone that is both sincere and warm. This makes Lloyd feel as if millions of ants are gnawing at his heart. It's utterly disgusting. It's truly revolting, brother. I really do appreciate your concern. His foolish little brother, already weak, now bears the curse of the Demon Lord. It genuinely worries others. Lloyd, severely injured, struggles to use mud to numb his senses. He turns to Lena, saying, Don't you want to try it? You promised to act with me. Lena begins to experiment with the strange mud as well, seeking information about the relief church. Sacrifices are inevitable, after all. Just thinking about the offer that vile man made makes Lloyd feel nauseous. As Lena carefully applies the mud, Lloyd decides to move ahead, not wanting to raise suspicion from the relief church's members. He has a clear objective in mind. He just needs to pretend to be pathetic in front of those people. Suddenly, as he turns a corner, Lloyd stumbles and rolls several times on the ground before finally reaching the entrance. He senses the dire condition of the refugees. Lloyd lies on the ground, feeling an overwhelming desire to die. Anyone who has fallen knows this position is truly humiliating. It appears dangerous, but in reality, it is far from safe. This perfectly mirrors the plight of the refugees at the relief church. In that moment, Lena's heart softens. If she can just fake a pitiful appearance, she might successfully infiltrate the relief church. The image seems beautiful, yet it leaves Lena feeling disappointed. Not only was Lena not welcomed, but the followers also chased her away. Unbeknownst to them, Lena's innate noble aura and her calm demeanor clearly marked her as an aristocrat sent to investigate the relief church, creating a stark contrast with the others. One glance is enough to tell that he was born from hardship. With a frail frame and tattered clothing, who would truly want to protect someone like that? Upon entering the relief church, Lloyd is also taken aback. The architecture here resembles that of an ordinary temple. The scenery is peaceful and familiar. Everything looks so happy, devoid of the war's atmosphere outside. In that instant, Elder Aide notices someone watching him and smiles, saying, Here, no one dares to judge your appearance. He even proactively helps Lloyd take off his hat. Lloyd silently thinks to himself, This isn't good, he's seen my face, and looks surprised. Why does he have such red eyes? This gaze, upon seeing Lloyd's embarrassed expression, only deepens the intrigue. There was also a palpable sense of loss swelling in this world. The adversary had confirmed that these crimson eyes were merely a facade, a project masquerading under the name of the illustrious Lloyd. How could one be so deceitful? At that moment, the enemy began to unveil the identity of the old man, Edward. Do you know where this place is? Here, not only do we provide free water and bread to the common folk, but we also aim to save those suffering under the tyrannical reign of the despot Godzilla. This relief force was established with that purpose in mind. Even your recent fall was due to the tyrant refusing to pave the roads. This was the first time Lloyd had heard such a compelling justification. This absurd explanation only deepened Lloyd's curiosity about the rescue force. After wandering around inside, he discovered that not only was this place surreal, but it also exuded a sense of solidity. Just then, a young girl appeared behind him. With hopeful eyes, the girl asked Lloyd, Excuse me, are you a new believer? After receiving the correct response from Lloyd, Shia assured him that there was plenty of food and water here, so he needn't worry about the hardships outside. Lloyd was also quite intrigued. Shia esteemed this place to the point that it seemed far beyond what ordinary means could create. Just as Lloyd was about to gather more information, a boy nearby urged Shia to hurry. From the boy's gaze, Lloyd sensed a profound wariness. He didn't seem like a good person, and those caught in the throes of chaos knew that even if someone looked intimidating, the surroundings were anything but safe. Moments ago, Reiner had been scouting for an escape route to infiltrate the relief organization. In a dark corner, Lina discovered the ground littered with abandoned bread. Amidst the chaos, He lurked in the shadows, eavesdropping on the information being exchanged. Through the words of the adversaries, Lai Na learned that Lloyd's identity had been compromised. In that moment, memories of Lloyd surged through Lai Na's mind. Lloyd was undeniably a nobleman, willing to wallow in the muck to fulfill his mission, even going so far as to investigate the Salvation Church directly. That daring leap will surely be etched into the annals of the Empire's history. As the captain of the knights, how could I let my lord fall into danger again? Meanwhile, Lloyd stood in the corner, sighing. After his unexpected encounter with Shia, someone called out to him from behind, making him think that his infiltration mission had been compromised. The reconnaissance mission seemed simple, but it was anything but. A kind-hearted man even shoved a handful of bread into his hands, claiming it was because he looked like he hadn't eaten in half a year. "You won't starve," he assured. "That will make you stronger." Thankfully, God had closed one door for Lloyd, but opened another. When Lloyd stumbled upon the Salvation Church, he pulled back the purple curtain just in time to see the congregation appearing one by one at the entrance. Lloyd caught a whiff of a familiar scent. It was Kakashi. At that moment, he also noticed the woman standing at the podium earlier who had inquired about his well-being. The intensity of her presence seemed to overshadow even the esteemed Tukui. Below, the crowd was blindly placing their faith in every word she uttered. Lloyd's curiosity deepened regarding the true intentions of the Salvation Church. Just then, the woman pulled back the curtain, invoking a spell upon the wall before them. She proclaimed that only the chosen ones could enter. Lloyd's curiosity about the church's formidable side intensified. Kakashi struggled to keep Lloyd in check. Only after all the civilians had stepped into the teleportation matrix did Kakashi finally release his grip. Placing his hand against the wall, Lloyd recognized it as a gem. The opponent was weaving a spell, a form of magic that was notoriously difficult to master. This made it increasingly rare to encounter a sorcerer, and it left Lloyd wondering what secrets the Salvation Church was concealing. Should he forsake the opportunity to pray to the Emperor, it would fall right into Kakashi's hands. Just then, a panicked driver rushed in. Lloyd thought to himself, "Couldn't you learn to knock before entering? Let's honor the friendship between us," Salin exclaimed, barging in like a family member. The frantic individual was searching for someone called Commander. Lloyd felt a wave of confusion wash over him. Commander? Could there be a third faction infiltrating this place? Suddenly, the grand gate swung open with a loud crash. What was Lai Na doing here? Who was the person he had mentioned? Under Lai Na's coercion, even Tukui struggled to uncover the name of that individual. Lloyd hid in the corner, trembling like a leaf in the wind, as communication from within was severed. Stepping outside would surely expose him. Meanwhile, Salin within suddenly pieced everything together. The disruptors outside were undoubtedly the knights who had been expelled earlier. The man he referred to was the weak-eyed man everyone felt compelled to protect. This despicable man turned out to be the god of death, Lloyd realized. He had placed his trust in the wrong person. After Kakashi entered, the building had heightened its defenses. If it weren't for the Duke's mission, how could he sacrifice this place for Kakashi to pass the trial? Kakashi was also on guard against Lloyd. Who would have thought the enemy would dare to openly walk through the front door? Sneaking around might have been wiser, but now Lai Na could only stand in shock. Where had the commander gone? Lloyd cautiously peeked out, urgently calling for Lai Na to leave. Without a moment's hesitation, Lai Na knelt on the ground. A child abandoned by their family now faced harsh criticisms. Suddenly, a heart that had known no warmth felt an unexpected surge of warmth. "My Lord Commander, I shall be loyal to you for all eternity," she declared. However, Lai Na knew that this loyalty hinged on not defying the Emperor's will. The immediate concern was to retreat and seek out a powerful sorcerer. "I must uncover the secrets hidden within the rescue cult." 3 days later, at Count Lloyd's estate, he was troubled by the search for the witch. Should I head south or search in the north? At that moment, the butler announced that a witch had been found to the north. Lloyd, filled with excitement, led Ryan and his subordinates to the tribe where the witch resided. What puzzled him was that witches usually lived together. Why was this one in such a desolate place? Rain suggested, "My lord, perhaps you could be a bit more aggressive." Just then, Lloyd spotted Kakashi. What is he doing here? Before Lloyd could react, a stone struck him squarely on the head. The blow left him dazed and reeling. Kakashi gazed at the old woman in front of him, stunned by her unexpected power. Why did she harbor such intense hatred for her brother? Had he wronged her in some way? Lloyd, too stunned to tend to the wound on his forehead, managed to ask, "What did you just say? How could someone like me be the villain?" She retorted. "I am clearly a messenger of justice." This old woman is simply out of her mind. If only she could see, she is a witch herself, mumbling about the need to be good, lest one encounters trouble later. Lloyd, a man of unwavering strength, found himself overwhelmed by the old woman's words. Meanwhile, Kakashi unintentionally caught the fallout from the encounter. Luckily, the old woman's granddaughter appeared just in time to restrain her, allowing Lloyd to escape a dire fate. With little hope of taking the village witch with him, Lloyd decided to head south in search of other witches. Just then, the girl stopped him, saying, "Greetings, my lord. I am the granddaughter of the old woman you just encountered. My name is Lan. First, I would like to apologize to you." Lloyd, still reeling from the shock, just wanted to return quickly to recover from his injury, wishing to avoid further entanglements. He replied, "It's nothing, just a small scratch." It was easy to say, but in his heart he thought, returning means I have to let the Demon King clean up this mess. Just then, Elder Ed overheard an unbelievable statement. "Actually, I am a witch as well. I know you are trying to resolve matters with the rescue cult. If you take me with you, all your problems will be solved." Lloyd was surprised at how quickly the search for a witch had come to an end. Regarding the earlier incident, he decided to forgive the old woman's rudeness. Kakashi, tightly embraced by the old woman, showed no signs of fear on his face. Yet inside, he was already trembling with apprehension. The old woman grasped Kakashi's hand and said, "In the path of your life, I see you are kind-hearted, yet unaware of love. However, your greatest enemy is the one you hold dearest. If you wish to live long, you must eliminate him as soon as possible." Kakashi, with a cold demeanor, replied, "I respect you as a person of virtue, but I must ask you to have some dignity and not toy with the fates of others." Kakashi understood well that if Lloyd's brother were to perish, he would follow him, leaving behind this wretched continent. On the way back, Lloyd curiously asked Lan, "How do you know the future? Is this ability innate for you?" "My lord, I cannot reveal the details of my fate. However, your destiny resembles a volcano, ready to unleash its destructive fury at any moment. And the boy beside the forest is like a bomb. Just a spark could obliterate an entire building." As these words echoed in his mind, chills coursed through Lloyd's body. At that moment, the boy who had just blocked Lloyd's path stepped forward. "My name is Dan, sir. Please take me with you. I swear I will be of help to you in the future." Just like himself, he was a child unloved, a man who had been scorned by his family since childhood. Fate had cast him into the river of despair. A boy deemed a disaster by the witches of the village. His family and friends crumbled overnight, all because he was destined to be a herald of calamity. When Dan spotted Lloyd in the crowd, understanding dawned upon him instantly. This man is the very source of the impending disaster. If I follow him, we could conquer anything. Thus, Dan pleaded with Lloyd to take him away from this place. The steward at the count's estate was equally astonished. "My lord, why have you brought back a child?" Yet, he remained resolute. He vowed to protect Lloyd to the very end. Though he had nothing in his hands, he possessed courage. At this moment, Lloyd was torn between whether to take the boy back or silence Dan quickly. The most pressing matter now was to uncover the secrets of the rescue cult. Before departing, he gathered 10 of his demon soldiers. It had been a while since he last fought. It was time to relieve some stress. And now, Lloyd discovered that Dan also wished to accompany him to investigate the rescue cult. This kid couldn't possibly contribute anything. Taking him on this mission would surely lead to death. Well, let's just consider him a ward of the estate for now. What was Dan's true intention in approaching him? There was a charm about him that was hard to dislike. Before setting off, Lloyd laid out the mission: clearly ignite chaos and rescue those in need. The demon soldiers remarked, "Captain, you've changed." In this world, being soft-hearted was the quickest path to death. As Lloyd grew impatient with their words, Lan interjected, "This is all my idea, and it's for the good of the Count after all." Upon hearing the captain's words, the demon soldiers perked up immediately. As the mission unfolded, they noticed the people here were weak and began to question why let them be slaughtered in a place devoid of combat strength. Just then, someone recognized them as Lloyd's demon soldiers. Though this was a den of evil, the lives of the villagers were still improving. Shia clutched the uniform of the demon soldier, sobbing and pleading, "Please, you must leave. This is our home. If you plan to destroy it, then take me with you. If you leave this place in ruins, I'll be forced to wander the streets, living each day without knowing if I will survive with my brother." For a knight to be so casually touched is simply unforgivable. Shia's brother shouted fiercely, "Don't, Shia! Please come here." The demon soldier raised his sword, which had taken many lives, but in an instant it was thrown to the ground. Even as a demon soldier, he still clung to a fragment of humanity. If he took the forbidden potion, he might forget all his sins. But for these people, this was their last glimmer of hope. At this moment, the refugees watched the relief church engulfed in flames, their minds consumed by a singular thought. The demon soldiers served the vampires, and Lloyd was merely a pawn of Godzilla. The assault on the relief church was undoubtedly an imperial order. Meanwhile, inside the church, Lloyd and the others reveled in the chaos as they infiltrated the place. Just as Lan was casting his spell, he was struck with shock, realizing it was merely a disguise of magic. Lloyd couldn't believe that magic existed in the human world. With Lan's affirmation, he began to accept the reality of magic. Could the one behind the relief cult be the demon lord? At that moment, Lan revealed he had a comprehensive understanding of the overall structure. Just as Lloyd was about to inquire about Lan's true power, he suddenly heard, "My lord, we can enter now." With his heart racing, Lloyd stepped forward. A flash of light swept past what was happening. After stepping into the teleportation array, Lloyd and the others realized they had returned to the church. Lan urged Lloyd to pay attention to this affliction. "Do you see the cracks around us? The room is filled with magical arrays. That door lies at the center of the magic circle. I believe these two must be connected." Without hesitation, Lan opened the wooden door. Before them lay a forest. While Ryan and Lloyd stood there, bewildered, Lan explained, "This too is magic. It connects to other realms. Only the right choices will lead us to our destination." Lloyd was eager to unravel the mysteries of the relief cult. At this moment, Lan indicated he was knowledgeable about spells, while magic was still a foreign concept to him. To solve this quickly would require at least 10 minutes. 10 minutes, Lloyd felt a twinge of anxiety. What if Kakashi had already taken the lead? Stepping through the wooden door, either he had found what he sought, or perhaps there were other paths within. The more he contemplated, the more anxious Lloyd became, unable to sit still. The sight of Lloyd, restless and agitated, tugged at everyone's heartstrings. "My lord, could you please take a seat and patiently wait?" Yet, just as Lloyd steadied himself, he vanished without a trace. Lan sensed Ryan's urgent demeanor, as if he had discovered something crucial. Lloyd stood behind the door, facing the one person he dreaded most. Kakashi's cold gaze bore into Lloyd, sending shivers down his spine. Gazing at Lloyd, Kakashi's eyes concealed a love that Lloyd could never fathom. The fierce flames consumed the hopes of the refugees they harbored all their hatred towards Godzilla, unaware of the true nature of their enemy. In the shadows, Salin quietly observed everything. Perhaps the rumors of the demon soldiers being hellish fiends were mere fabrications. If it were my love, I would seal off the entire building and obliterate everyone within. It's a shame for the captives. Ed had resolved not to yield anything. The ultimate victor could only be him. Meanwhile, Kakashi held the torch high, the scattered confidential documents on the ground, revealing that he had already gathered the secrets of the rescue cult. Lloyd dared to question Kakashi. "You're incredibly quick to act." Suddenly, Kakashi flipped his hand, causing the torch to tumble. Before Lloyd could react, the flames swiftly spread, engulfing everything. Confused by Kakashi's abrupt actions, Lloyd could only hope to salvage the situation. He was trying to uncover the mastermind behind the rescue cult, but Kakashi thwarted him at every turn. Enraged, Lloyd struggled. "You're insane. Why would you do this? Don't you need these documents? Weak and trapped in Kakashi's grip, he felt helpless. Moreover, Kakashi effortlessly carried Lloyd outside with one hand. Put me down, now Lloyd demanded, baffled by Kakashi's actions. The question lingered in his mind aside from a few high-ranking officials. Who else could be the puppet master behind the rescue cult? What does purple symbolize, anyway? And who is the one you follow, Kakashi? It must be Duke Lucas, right? This was all planned from the start, wasn't it? You bastard, how dare you toy with me? In a sudden burst of fury, Lloyd slammed his left hand against the edge of the door, targeting that foolish younger brother. In that moment of rage, a warm trickle of blood flowed. Reiner was held captive by Kakashi, and soon, Lloyd was tossed into Reiner's arms. A different persona emerged. Kakashi, I will definitely destroy you, he vowed. Kakashi whispered back, if you want to live, pretend none of this ever happened. As Lloyd regained his senses, memories of Kakashi's actions flooded back. It seemed Kakashi had concealed a hidden technique. Just then, Lina entered, and Alda promptly inquired about how Lan had dispelled the magic. He was eager to learn Lan's secrets. Reiner spoke, Master, it's all thanks to your guidance. Lan said to draw a circle with a focal point at the center, then spin left 3 times and right 2 times to activate the special action of the secret room. Suddenly, Lloyd recalled the actions within the secret room, unable to restrain himself from moving. Master, your fortune must be extraordinary. At that moment, the butler opened the door, announcing, My lord, a distinguished guest awaits. The emperor has summoned you to the palace. Truly, the more one fears something, the more likely it is to happen.